There are places in Egypt that even Egypt refuses to remember. Not because they hold treasure, not because they hold kings, but because they hold the kind of truth that can collapse a civilization. And this story begins not in a royal palace, but beneath it. Deep below the sands of ancient Memphis, far beneath the burial shafts and ritual chambers, lies a corridor sealed thousands of years before the pyramids were called ancient. A corridor built for one purpose: to hide the darkest obsession of the longest reigning pharaoh in human history, Pepi II. A chamber carved in total secrecy. No carvings for gods. No inscriptions of triumph. Only smooth limestone walls and a single platform at the center. A room so isolated that even royal architects weren't permitted to sketch it. A room guarded by soldiers who never returned home. Archaeologists will tell you it might have existed. Historians will tell you there are signs. But the truth is older than written Egyptian history, and it begins with a child, not Pepi, someone else. A boy no older than 11, shivering, waiting. His small frame illuminated by flickering fire, and standing behind him, watching every fade of light along the honey-glazed skin, was Pepi II, not yet a monster, but already something worse, a ruler who believed that every human life, every breath, every scream, belonged to him alone. You cannot understand Pepi's darkness without understanding his childhood. He was not trained to be king. He was not raised to rule. He was made king because death demanded it. 2 deaths in 1 week. Pepi's father, Merenre, supposedly died from a scorpion sting inside 3 sealed rooms, a sting that somehow appeared on the inside of his throat. Pepi's older brother, the heir, died from a fever that struck only him, while the rest of the palace ate the same food and drank the same water. Accidents? The priests were not convinced, nor were the foreign scribes who quietly recorded the events. But Egypt never investigated. Egypt never questioned. Egypt needed a king. And so, at 6 years old, Pepi was marched into the coronation hall, bare-chested, terrified, surrounded by priests chanting words he didn't understand. Then came the ritual. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't gentle. They lowered him into a basin of fresh, steaming bull's blood, a ceremony meant to rebirth the pharaoh as a living god. Most adults vomited the first time they witnessed it. Pepi did not scream. He did not cry. He laughed. A small, curious laugh, the kind a child makes when seeing something strange for the first time. Priests looked at each other in silence. Some stepped back, but the worst moment came next. The ritual demanded he take a life. A prisoner was pushed forward, kneeling, blindfolded, trembling. A bronze ceremonial dagger was placed in Pepi's hands, too heavy, too sharp, and the boy tried and tried and tried, 11 attempts. Not out of violence, not out of cruelty, out of fascination. The child, who would one day rule for 90 years, whispered into the severed head, "Does your God hear you now?" Witnesses never forgot those words. Some fled the priesthood entirely. Egypt had crowned a king, but something else had been born that night. Most pharaohs grew into their power slowly, guided by advisors, tempered by rituals, shaped by responsibility. Pepi had none of that. He was a child thrown into a world where every command was obeyed, every dream fulfilled, and every curiosity encouraged. Instead of mentors, he had enablers, officials who feared him, advisors who lied to him, priests who bowed to him even when he made mistakes that cost lives. And Pepi absorbed this like a sponge. He began observing the reactions of everyone around him. If he ordered someone punished, how quickly did they scream? If he rewarded someone, how long did their gratitude last? If he threatened silence, who dared to speak? By age 10, he kept notebooks, not of diplomacy or trade, but of human behavior. He recorded What fear looked like, how long panic lasted, how screams changed when someone was exhausted, how eyes moved when someone lied. He wasn't studying people. He was studying control, and Egypt was his laboratory. A servant's child, missing from the palace. Then the daughter of a groundskeeper. Then 2 brothers from a nearby village. None of them returned. None were searched for. Egypt's officials realized what was happening. But how do you tell a god king that he cannot have what he wants? How do you question a pharaoh who believes your life belongs to him? You don't. So they did something else. They hid it. Records vanished. Families were paid off. Villages were silenced. And Pepi learned that his desires had no consequences. Soon, it wasn't enough for him to watch. He wanted proximity. He wanted detail. He wanted to test the line between pain and obedience. This is when the chamber beneath Memphis was constructed. Not for state ritual, not for a royal ceremony, for Pepi's private investigations. The chamber was simple, too simple. No religious symbols, no images of gods, only function. A raised platform, stone drainage channels, torch holders carved directly into the walls. Exactly 100 of them. Pepi's obsession was not violence. It was an observation. He treated people the way astronomers treated stars. Distant, untouchable, but endlessly fascinating. He studied heartbeat patterns, breathing rhythms, muscle reactions, psychological collapse recovery time, and like every scholar chasing perfection, he needed variables. The honey ritual was not designed for torture. It was designed to measure fear. Honey trapped heat. Honey slowed insects. Honey prolonged reactions. Everything was intentional. Everything served a purpose. But the part Egypt never forgave was that Pepi didn't allow death. He demanded the victims be healed, so the process could repeat. Not out of cruelty, but because death ruined his data. This was the mind of a king who ruled longer than any pharaoh before or after. Not a savage, a scientist of suffering, and his empire paid the price. Egyptian officials created a new position inside the palace, overseer of royal entertainments, but it had nothing to do with music, nothing to do with the ceremony. Its true function was darker, identifying potential victims, transporting them in secrecy, managing chambers, training physicians to heal survivors, disposing of remains, and rewriting records afterward. This network grew into hundreds, then more than 1,000 members. Every level of society became complicit. Scribes who altered census lists, soldiers who escorted deliveries, doctors who maintained victims long enough for another session. Egypt wasn't simply hiding Pepi's obsession, it was enabling it, because a kingdom whose economy depended on stability could not risk exposing the instability of its own king. Historians will tell you drought, famine, climate change, political fragmentation, but the numbers don't lie. During Pepi's 90-year reign, Egypt's population plummeted, not by natural disaster, not by invasion, by disappearance. Entire regions lost children. Labor forces shrank, villages emptied, families fled south or east into the deserts, and the workforce that once built pyramids, quarries, temples, and irrigation systems vanished. Egypt's strength was not its gold or its kings, it was its people, and Pepi's obsession consumed them. When he finally died, likely close to 100 years old, the Old Kingdom, the age of pyramid builders, the era of unstoppable power, spiraled into collapse within decades. Some historians whisper another theory. Egypt didn't die from drought or economics. Egypt died because its future was taken before it could grow. Pepi II's name appears in king lists. His monuments still stand. His burial site exists, but there are no grand inscriptions praising his character. No vast sculptures celebrating his leadership. No detailed histories of his achievements. Egypt, a civilization obsessed with memory, chose silence. And silence is louder than any monument. Pepi ruled nearly a century, but the greatest thing he ever destroyed was trust. Trust between king and people, between priesthood and family, between the government and villages. The empire never recovered. Archaeologists speculate it still exists. Some believe it lies beneath the palace of Pepi's capital city. Others think it was intentionally collapsed. A few whispers that ground-penetrating scans revealed strange cavities, too symmetrical, too isolated, too forbidden. But Egypt will never excavate it, because some history doesn't need to be found. Some history needs to be buried. And Pepi II's legacy is a warning carved into silence. A ruler who cannot be questioned will never question himself. A ruler who believes he is a god will forget that his people are human. And an empire that hides the darkness of one man may one day be consumed by it. Pepi II lived longer than any king in Egypt, but his reign proves one thing. Sometimes the greatest danger to a civilization is not the drought that kills its crops or the war that drains its armies, but the child crowns too soon.